you were to ask someone in the 16th century what they wanted in regards to transportation, they would have said faster carriages. But Henry Ford knew what they wanted more than they did. And that is why this dyslexic icon was able to revolutionize the car industry. Here's a quick Henry Ford timeline of his life and his accomplishments. He was born in 1863. He began his career when he was about 25. He had a great appreciation and interest in engineering, and then he began the Ford Motor Company when he was 40. Then he innovated with the moving assembly line when he was about 53. And he passed away when he was 84 years old. I want to run through some of the key accomplishments of Henry Ford. Henry Ford started the Ford Motor Company when he was 40 years old, and then 5 years later, they came out with the Model T. I think it's really interesting to see that he was further along in his life when he started to do the thing that he is most known for. I think sometimes it's easier to proceed quicker with things because you just have a little bit more knowledge, you have a little bit more confidence. With that said, I think young people all across the world have done amazing things and should continue. But I think it's also a good reminder that when you're young, you're still learning. And it's okay that if it takes some time to get some experience under your belt before you really accelerate into the world and into the marketplace, and you're able to financially reap the rewards of your knowledge. Another really cool thing about Henry Ford is he created the moving assembly line. This enabled them to make a car within a couple hours, where prior to that, it took basically an entire day. I think it was like 12 hours. And so the innovation that is needed when you're running a business or working higher up in a business can be really helpful in excelling that business and helping it reach new heights. And so if you think about the innovation specifically around the moving conveyor belt, it really changed the whole industry and is still used today. Now, we do have people like Elon Musk who are innovating again around how cars are assembled, and it'll be interesting to see what that looks like 10, 20 years from now. But I think it's really incredible to just highlight these types of things. Obviously, you don't have to be dyslexic to be an innovator, but being dyslexic, it kind of requires you to lean into some of these other strengths that you may have because you have other weaknesses. It's not clear that he was dyslexic, but it's wildly speculated that he was. Another thing that he introduced was worker welfare. And this is really interesting because he recognized the benefit of a win-win situation. So he knew that if he paid his employees more, that he would be able to retain those employees for a longer period of time. This would increase his production, so he would be able to get more done, and therefore he'd be more profitable. I always like to think about negotiation when I'm dealing with this, is it has to be a win-win. So if I'm talking to someone who wants to make X and I can only do half of that, honestly, I won't even continue the conversation because I don't want them to take a job for half of what I can pay, because that's not a win-win. So you really want to find opportunities where both people are happy and both people are winning, so you can really move forward with people on the same page and both people are in a good headspace. Now I'm going to run through some of my favorite quotes by Henry Ford. Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. I think that's really interesting because coming together is pretty easy. Like, you can get a group of people to meet up, not a big deal. Staying together is a little harder because it requires a little bit more autonomy with one another. But then working together is a whole nother thing. You have to be able to work through issues, different opinions. It just requires you to have better communication, and that's really important if you're going to build things and go far. Second quote, quality means doing it right when no one is looking. I think that's really awesome. We've talked about loyalty before and integrity, and the real test of integrity is what you're doing when no one's around, and no one's going to know if you have integrity or not. And I think that's just really important. So when you find someone who lacks integrity, I think it's important to talk about that and address it. No one's perfect. We all will mess up occasionally, but you really want to identify the people that are going to be truly loyal and then also have integrity. Third quote that I really like, any customer can have a car painted any color that they want as long as it's black. I love this quote because it just really simplifies. You know, he adds some levity to something that was ultimately kind of restricting. And he just kind of made it the standard and said, hey, cars are black and this is what we do. And so I just love his approach with that. And I just think it's kind of funny. Fourth quote, obstacles are those frightful things that you see when you take your eye off of the goal. There's nothing simple about life. There's a lot of different things that come up. You may have, deaths in your family, sicknesses, just unexpected hurdles that you have to overcome. And really being focused on the things that you're trying to accomplish will really help you, whether that be in your personal life or your business life. I think just staying focused and keeping your attention on the main thing will help you achieve what it is that you're trying to do. Fifth and final quote, the only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing. I love this because we're always learning. And I think a sign of intelligence is when you make a mistake and then you change your behavior because of that mistake. We're all gonna make mistakes. We're all gonna make a decision that wasn't the best thing to do. Especially in business, you're gonna try things. And if you're doing that same thing over and over again and not learning from it, well, you're probably not gonna be in business very long. And it's probably a sign of your intelligence or your self-awareness. And so being aware the outcomes of your decision is really important. And if you wanna grow as a person, and if you wanna grow in business, you really have to learn from your mistakes. I think it's also important to recognize some of the negative things about Henry Ford. He was a pretty well-known anti-Semite. He put out writings and information in his newspaper, really saying negative things about Jews, and a little bit of a supporter for Hitler as well. Unforgivable in that aspect, and I think it's important to recognize that and call that out. I think the company today is, vastly different, and it's a company that supports and employs a lot of individuals. So I'm not going to go back 100 years and try to hold the Ford company responsible for something someone said many years ago. But I do think it's important to recognize these types of things when you're elevating different ideas and things that they've done in life, is to also understand that they were flawed men and women. In this case, he was a flawed man, and there's no good reason for someone to treat a different nationality or any individual differently based on their beliefs, based on their skin color, or anything like that. So in that aspect, we have a big fail from Henry Ford, and his anti-Semite views are a dark mark on his legacy.